By the end of this video, you'll have an onboarding system that will automatically create all the necessary folders and files, generate the contract, and sends the welcome email the moment you close new client. Let's get started. For this system, we are going to use n8n only. We don't need AI agents or cloud code because this workflow follows the same steps every time you close new client. To get started, we need to send client's data to n8n, and in order to do that, we will need a webhook. A webhook is just a URL that allows one system to send data to another. Most modern CRMs allow you to send webhook call whenever a specific action happens, and if you are currently using Google Spreadsheet to store your leads and clients' data, you can do the same thing by leveraging Google Script in order to trigger a webhook. So here is what you need to do. The moment you mark a client as closed inside Google Spreadsheet or your CRM, it needs to trigger a webhook that sends all the data regarding that client. We are going to do that right away. So first, click on the plus and search for webhook. You want to choose the HTTP method to post. While we are testing, we are going to use the test URL, and once we finish the system, we are going to swap the test URL with the production URL. So first, copy the test URL, go inside your CRM and paste the webhook URL. In my case, I'm using Postman to trigger this workflow in order to show you how everything will look like. So in our case, we are including the following data: the client name, business name, the email, the service package, the price, and the website. Okay, our system has been triggered. We are going to pin the data we have just received in order to keep using it without us having to trigger the workflow over and over again. For this demo, I will use an SEO agency as an example. So I'll create all the assets they would need whenever they onboard a new client, things like folders, Google Spreadsheets, contracts, and so on. To follow along, you will need your Google Drive, Google Spreadsheets, and Google Docs connected to n8n. If you haven't done it yet, there are plenty of tutorials on YouTube, and the process will take you less than 5 minutes. All right, let's start building the workflow. And the first thing we are going to need is Google Drive. The operation we will leave it to create. For the folder name, it will be the client name. So we are going to pick the client name that we have sent via the webhook call. In my case, I'm gonna leave the parent drive as my drive, and parent folder, it will be n8n. Now that we have our client folder set up, we are going to search for Google Sheet, create spreadsheet. For the title, I'm gonna name it keyword tracker. And that's pretty much it. The next thing we need to do is to create column headers inside this Google spreadsheet. And since we cannot do it inside this node, we are going to search for edit fields. Inside edit fields, you want to create all the column headers names that you want inside that Google spreadsheet. So what you want to do, you want to fill in the names here, which are going to be the column headers names. And for the value, you want them to be empty. Next, search for Google Sheets again, but this time the operation will be append a row in sheet. For the document, we are going to switch it to ID. And for the sheet, we are also going to switch it for ID. The operation, we are going to leave it to append row. In order to get the variables IDs that we are going to fill in inside these two fields, we need to trigger these nodes. And in order to do that, we are going to deactivate this one and trigger the workflow. Okay, so our workflow has been triggered. I'm gonna pin this data here, enable append row in sheet. Then on create spreadsheet, we are going to bring in the document ID, which is the spreadsheet ID. And for the sheet ID, you want to scroll down until you find sheet ID. And for the mapping column mode, you want to leave it to map each column manually. Next, click on the plus, search for Google Drive, then search for move file. Basically, the move file node will allow us to move the spreadsheet we have just created inside the Google Drive folder regarding our new client. So for the file, you want to switch it from to by ID, and you want to bring in the spreadsheet ID here. For the parent drive, in my case, I'm going to leave it to my drive, and for the parent folder, I'm going to switch it to by ID, turn it to expression, and you want to scroll down until you see client folder and bring in the ID here. Now let's trigger the system and see how everything will look like. Okay, our workflow has finished running. Let's take a look inside my Google Drive and see how the first Google spreadsheet that we have just created look like. So John Smith is the name of the client that we are currently testing, and keyword tracker is the name of the Google spreadsheet that we have just created. And as you can see, here are the column headers that we have named earlier inside the edit fields. Now click on the plus and search for wait. And let's do 20 seconds. The reason why we are waiting 20 seconds before moving to the next steps is because we are going to create additional Google assets. And if you continue creating them back to back, it might hit Google API rate limiting and trigger an error. That's the reason why we are going to wait for something like 20 seconds. This way we are sure that we are not gonna hit the API rate limiting by Google. Real quick, if you want to automate part of your business but don't know where to start, we can help. We will audit your current workflow, identify bottlenecks, and build the right systems for you. You can schedule a call using the first link on the description below. Back to the video. Now that we have everything we need, we are going to generate the contract. And in order to do so, we will need Google Docs. So search for Google Docs. For me, I have two Google Docs. I have the native one, which is this one, Google Docs, and I have another one, which is a community node, which is named Markdown to Google Docs. For this demo, I'm going to use Markdown to Google Docs, and the reason for that is because it allows me to use Markdown formatting, so the output will look properly structured. If you would like to install this community node, simply head over Settings, then click on Community Nodes. Once you are inside Community Nodes, click on Install and type in n8n nodes md to docs and click Install. Once you have it installed, simply search for Google Docs and you will see the node Markdown to Google Docs. So I'm going to choose directly create a Google Docs document. Inside this node, I'm going to leave the drive to my drive, and inside the folder, I'm going to switch it to by ID, turn it to expression, and bring in the ID of the folder we have created for our client. For the document title, let's name it Contract. Turn Markdown input to expression. So this is the demo contract that I'm using for this workflow, and as you can see, it has many variables like the client name, the client business name, the date, and so on. Next, I'm going to connect ClickUp to this workflow so I can create folders inside my ClickUp workspace. So click on the plus, search for ClickUp, create a folder. In order to connect ClickUp to n8n, head over ClickUp, click on your profile on the top right, then Settings. On the left side menu, inside Settings, search for ClickUp API, then Regenerate. Once you type in your password, you will be able to copy the new API key. Then head over n8n, click on Create New Credentials, paste in your access token here, save, and you will see connection tested successfully. Now that our ClickUp account is connected to n8n, I'm gonna select my team name, which is Innovative Flows, then the space name, which is clients in my case, and for the name of the folder, I'm gonna bring in the client's name that I have sent via the webhook, client name here. Then I'm gonna search for ClickUp again, and this is personal choice, create a list, again the team name, Innovative Flows, the space name, clients, the folder name or ID, we are gonna turn it to expression and bring in the ID from create a folder, and let's name it something like checklist. This is just an example. Now the only thing left is to send a welcome email to our new client. So in order to do so, we are going to search for Gmail, send a message. The operation, we will leave it to send, and the email, we are going to bring in the email that we have sent via the webhook. For the subject line, I'm gonna use welcome aboard and first name of that person. I'm sending the full name via the webhook call, but I'm using the following formula in order to extract the first name from the full name. For the email type, I'm going to choose text, turn message to expression. I'm going to use the following email copy. By the way, I highly recommend you include your calendar link or whatever booking platform you are currently using so your client can schedule call with you. And inside the copy, as you can see, I am using all the variables that I have sent via the webhook, like the service name, project fee, and so on. But before trigger our workflow, there is one thing left, which is the contract. We need to include the contract inside this email, and in order to do so, we need to download it. And in order to be able to download the contract, we need to search for Google Drive, then download file. On the file, you want to switch from to by ID and bring in the contract ID here. But because we haven't generated any contract so far, so we are going to run our system in order to generate the contract so we can include its ID inside our Google Drive download node. So we are going to deactivate this one and trigger our system. Okay, so our workflow has generated a contract and the ClickUp folder and the list. Now we have all the variables we will need in order to set up our download the file node as well as the email node. So we are going to activate these two nodes. Then on download file, we want to bring in the contract document ID here. Then let's pin everything. Now that we have all the nodes pinned, we are going to trigger the following node, which is download the file. Now that our download the file has been triggered successfully, click on send a message, click on add option, append an attribution, you want to disable it, again add option, attachment, click on add attachment, and you want to type in the name you see here in orange from download the file. In our case, it is data and the attachment file is data, so we are not going to change anything. Then click on add option, sender name, and type in your name. Now let's trigger the workflow again and see how the email will look like when it lands inside the client inbox. So the email has been sent successfully. Let's take a look inside my email inbox. And as we can see here, welcome aboard John. And this is the email we have just sent right now. And below we have the contract attached to this email. And by the way, the reason why I have used Google Docs community node regarding the markdown formatting is because of this. So we can see the headers like this, these lines and these subheaders, as you can see right now. Now let's take a look inside my my Google Drive, and as you can see, we have our folder John Smith, and these are all the files that we have created. So we have the keyword tracker, the content tracker. So if you open it, you will see article title, main keyword, word count, status, URL, and the contract that we have seen earlier inside my email inbox is the same here as well. One last thing, before you deploy your system, make sure that you go back to the webhook, copy your production URL, then paste it inside your CRM or Google spreadsheet. Why? Because we have done building the system and now we'll deploy it live. That's the reason why you want to switch to production URL. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please feel free to drop a thumbs up because it really helps me a lot. And if you have any questions about this workflow or you need help automating a specific business problem, feel free to drop a comment below and I will try to create a new system for you as soon as I can. See you on the next video.